To find x, we have to look at the angle we're given and ask what's the relationship of these sides to the angle. So this is the opposite side, it's the furthest away, and this is the hypotenuse of the right triangle. It is opposite the right angle. So we need to remember which trig function uses opposite and hypotenuse, and the answer is sine. So in this case, we're taking sine of 55 degrees, and that equals the opposite side, which is our unknown x, and the hypotenuse, which is 59. And then we want to get the variable by itself, so we'll multiply both sides by 59. So x equals 59 sine 55, and typing that into a calculator, you get b. Okay, write the sine ratio of a. So sine is defined as opposite over hypotenuse. So we're focused on angle A. So the opposite side of A is the furthest away. So 4 is the opposite, and hypotenuse is the longest side, or the side opposite the right angle. So in this case, 5. Okay, Pythagorean theorem can be used for all triangles. That's false. It can only be used for right triangles. Okay, true or false, tangent of A equals sine A over cosine A. Well, sine A is defined as opposite over hypotenuse, and cosine of A is defined as adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, so we have fraction within a fraction, so we divide. So this part divided by this part. Okay, so to divide fractions, we multiply by the opposite, so I'll do it up here. So keep the first fraction the same, and multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, so we can cancel these out, and we get opposite over adjacent, which is the definition of tangent. So yes, this is true then. Solve for x. So we want to get x by itself, multiply both sides by 32. So 32 sine of 52 degrees equals x, and then you type this into your calculator to get c. Find x and y to the nearest tenth. Okay, so first I'm gonna find this line right here, which I'll label h. So I know the hypotenuse, and I want to know the opposite of 30. So opposite and hypotenuse, I'll use sine. And then I need to get the variable by itself. So 34 sine of 30 degrees equals h. And then you can use a calculator or trig functions, the special right triangles, to know that h is 17. Okay, so I'm going to call this part of the base, I'll call that B, and I'll call this part of it A. Okay, so I'll find B first. So I'll use the 30-degree angle again, but this time I need to find B, so I want to use the adjacent side. So why don't I use cosine? So cosine of 30 degrees equals adjacent, which is b, over hypotenuse, which is 34. Okay, so multiplying both parts by 34. 34 cosine 30 degrees equals equals b. And then again, using a calculator, you can determine that b is about 29.4. Okay, so now I'll find x next. So x, I'll use the 45-degree angle. So 45, the opposite side is h, and the hypotenuse is x. So opposite and hypotenuse, I'll use sine. Sine of 45 degrees is equal to 17 over x. Okay, so multiply both sides by x. and then divide both sides by sine of 45 degrees. So x equals 17 over the sine of 45 degrees, and using a calculator, I can determine that that is about 24. Okay, so now I need a, so I'll use the 45-degree angle again. So since a is the adjacent side, I'll use cosine. So I'll do that over here. Cosine of 45 degrees is equal to adjacent, which is a, over hypotenuse, which I just figured out is approximately 24. Okay, so multiplying both sides by 24. 24 cosine of 45 degrees equals a, and that means that a is approximately, or exactly, 17. Okay, so then x I figured out earlier is 24, so it's either choice C or D. And then to find y is equal to these two pieces put together. So 17 plus 29.4 would be 46.4. Okay, solve for the missing side lengths. So this is a special right triangle. The general relationship for special right triangles is if this is 1 and this is 1, this is radical 2 for 45, 45, 90 right triangles. So in this case, we know that the two legs are equal or congruent, so they both have length 3. And the hypotenuse is the leg times radical 2. So 3 times radical 2 is 3 radical 2. Oh, sorry, I got that backwards. Okay, so this one's about angle of depression. So a common mistake with angle depression is using the wrong angle. So here's our airplane, and we need to imagine it looking straight ahead. But it's not looking straight ahead. The pilot inside is looking diagonally downward. Okay, but this angle, the angle he's lower than looking straight ahead, this is the angle of depression. Okay, so the airplane's altitude is 3 kilometers. So the airplane is 3 kilometers off the ground. So if this is 3, this is also 3. And I want to know the horizontal distance. So straight left and right is horizontal. Okay, so for the 26-degree angle, I know the adjacent side and the opposite side. So I'm going to use tangent. Tangent of 26 degrees is equal to opposite over adjacent. Okay, so I need to get the variable by itself, multiply both sides by d. And then divide both sides by tangent of 26. Okay, so 3 divided by tangent of 26 is approximately 6 kilometers. Okay, so drawing a picture will help for this one. Triangle ABC, and C has to be the 90-degree right angle. And cosine of B is 5 over 13. So remember, cosine is defined as adjacent over hypotenuse. So for angle B, the adjacent side is 5, and the hypotenuse is 13. So what is this length? Well, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. I'll call this x for now. So the sum of the sides squared equals the hypotenuse squared. So x is 12. And b, we want tangent of b. So tangent is defined as opposite over adjacent. So 12 over 5. Sine of 30 degrees. So this is a cofunction identity. Sine of x is equal to cosine of 90 minus x. And remember, the reason is if you look at a single triangle, if this is 90, let's pretend this is x. So 180 degrees total, 90 of it's used up already. That means there's 90 degrees left over for this and this. So if this is x, this must be 90 minus x. And then when you label the sides, you see that, for example, sine of this angle, sine of x is a over x. Or that's confusing, let's call this c. Okay, so sine of angle x is a over c, and cosine of the other angle is also a over c. So in this case, we have 90 minus 30 is 60 degrees. So cosine of 60 degrees. Find a. So we want a, but we've got tangent of a instead. So the way to get rid of it is to do the arctangent of both sides. So you have to type arctangent of 86 into your calculator, and you get approximately that. For problem 12, to get rid of the cosine, we do the inverse operation, which is arc cosine. So we have to do that to both sides. And you type arc cosine of 7/14 into your calculator to get 60. Problem 13, we've got a rectangular soccer field, 45 by 65, and he is walking diagonally. And I want to know the angle with respect to the 45-meter side. So that means touching the 45-meter side. So for example, this angle. Okay, so I can ignore this part of the field now. Just look at the right triangle. So I know that for this angle that I care about, which I'll call x, I know the adjacent side and the opposite side. So it makes sense to use tangent. So tangent of x equals opposite over adjacent. And then to get rid of the tangent, the opposite is arctangent. Okay, so you type arctangent of 65 over 45 into your calculator to get approximately 55. Okay, so a tree casts a shadow 14 yards long. The tree is 10 yards tall. What's the angle of elevation of the shadow? All right, so I'm trying to find the angle with x degrees, and I know the opposite side and the adjacent side. So tangent makes sense here. To get rid of the tangent, the inverse operation is doing arctangent of both sides. So you type arctangent of 10/14 into your calculator to get approximately 36 degrees. Write the equation of the circle in standard form. All right, so first thing I'm going to get all the variables on the left and all the constants on the right. So I need to add x squared to both sides, but then I'm also going to add 20 to both sides. So that gives me x squared plus 4x plus y squared minus 2y equals 20. All right, so I know that my goal for a circle is to end up with something that looks like this. So to find the missing value, well, half of positive 4 is positive 2. But then when I distribute this out, I know I have to do 2 squared is 4. So I have this part from before, but I need an extra plus 4 to fit this part. I can't just add 4 to the left side for free, so I'm also going to add 4 to the right side. Now the y's, half of negative 2 is minus 1. But again, I'm going to do negative 1 squared. So I've already got the y squared minus 2y I need, but this extra part requires an additional plus 1. And I can't just add it on the left, so I'll also add it on the right. So I started with 20 on the right, I added an extra 4, added an extra 1, now I'm at 25. So that is choice B. Okay, so standard form of a circle. So because it turns to positive 5, I know that it must really be x minus negative 5. H is negative 5. And then over here, k, you can see directly, is 3. And 16 is r squared, but I want just r. So squaring both sides, I see that r must be 4. So the center is negative 5 comma 3, and the radius is 4. Okay, what is the equation of the circle given the diameter endpoints? Okay, so doing a quick sketch, negative 2 is over here. 10, negative 2 is way over here. Okay, so the circle looks like this, but I care about the center. So the center is going to be halfway between these 2 points. So I can use the midpoint formula. So I'll call this x1, y1, x2, y2. So substituting into the midpoint formula, negative 2 plus 10 over 2, comma, negative 2 plus negative 2 over 2. All right, so I've got the center of the circle is 4, negative 2. But because this is standard form of a circle, I need to substitute these values in. So x minus 4 squared. But then over here, y minus negative 2 becomes y plus 2 squared. All right, and then to find the radius, well, I already know that the center is at 4, negative 2. So how far is it from 4, negative 2 to 10, negative 2? Well, in this case, we don't really need to use the distance formula because it's a straight line. We can easily see it's 6 units. So r is 6, but remember the equation wants r squared. So 6 squared is 36. So x minus 4 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 36, which is choice D. Write the parabola in vertex form. So first, I'm going to get the y by itself. So I need to subtract everything else to the other side, or add. So that puts us at y equals negative x squared minus 4x plus 28. All right, so I already know that a is negative 1, but I need h and k because this is what vertex form looks like, where hk is the coordinates of the vertex. So to find h, I'll use the axis of symmetry formula. So negative b, negative, negative 4 is positive 4. 2a, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So h is negative 2. To find k, I'm going to substitute the x value into the equation. So negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 2 plus 28. So this part becomes the negative from the outside, then 4 plus 8 plus 28. So negative 4 plus 8 is 4, plus another 28 is 32. So a is negative 1, h is negative 2, so x minus h becomes x minus negative 2 or x plus 2. Bring down the squared, and k is positive 32. So this looks like choice A. Find the area of the shaded region. Okay, so AB, this length, is 38.38. So I would like to know what fraction of a full circle do I have? So let's pretend we had the full circumference. So that formula is 2 pi r, and in this case that's 2 pi 11, which is 22 pi. Okay, so this length is 38.38. If we divide it by the full circumference, that will tell us what fraction of the full circle we have. So this is approximately 0.55. So this means that this is about 55% of a full circle. Okay, so now we care about area. So again, let's pretend it's a full circle. The full area would be pi r squared, and in this case r is 11. So pi 11 squared is 121 pi. But we don't have the full circle, we have about 55% of it. So multiplying by the fraction or the decimal we got earlier gives us b. Okay, find the arc length of minor arc PQ. So remember, that means we go the short way around the circle. So this 210 is not that useful because we care about this angle instead, but a full circle has 360 degrees. So taking away 210 means that this must be 150 degrees. So first, let's pretend we have the full circumference. That would be 2 pi r, and in this case r is 15, so 30 pi. But we don't have the full circumference, so how much do we have? Well, a full circle would be 360 degrees, but this arc only uses up 150 degrees. Okay, so if we do this calculation, that leads us to choice B. Okay, solve for x. So when two chords intersect, the product, not the sum, product meaning multiply, product of their two pieces is equal. So x times 5 equals 2 times 10. Convert 6 pi to degree measure. Well, I'm going to set up a proportion. Okay, so I'll make this my radian side and this my degree side. And the denominator, I'll say a full circle. Okay, so a full circle in degrees is 360. A full circle in radians is 2 pi. And on the numerator, I'll put the part that we actually have. So the part of a full circle we have is 6 pi, and I'm trying to figure out how many partial degrees out of 360 that is. So I'll cross multiply. 2 pi x equals 5 pi or 6 pi times 360. So that would become 300 pi. And then dividing both sides by 2 pi, we get x equals 150 degrees. Find the missing angles. So PSQ is an inscribed angle on a diameter. So that means that A is 90 degrees. And then 34, 90, and B fill up the triangle of 180. So 34 plus 90, we've used up 124 degrees so far. So how many do we have left over? We have 56 degrees left over. So that would be choice C. Okay, arc AC is 125 degrees. Arc BC is 140 degrees. So putting these two arcs together, we know that the full circle has 360. So 125 plus 140. We've used up 265 degrees so far. So the total is 360. So subtracting, we get 95 degrees for this arc. And then C is the inscribed angle that cuts off the arc, so half of that is 47.5 degrees. Okay, write the equation. So first I'm going to draw a quick sketch. So directrix y equals 3.75, that'd be about right here. And then the focus is at -1, 3.25. And we always want the vertex. So the vertex is always halfway between the focus and the directrix. So the vertex is obviously lined up with the focus, so it has the same x-coordinate. And the y-coordinate is halfway between 3.25 and 3.75. So that'd be 3.5. All right, so to find A, I need to use the formula 1 over 4A equals distance from focus to directrix. Oh, excuse me, vertex to directrix, or vertex to focus. Okay, so from the vertex to the directrix, the distance is 0.25 or 1/4. So looking at this, we can tell that A has an absolute value of 1. But looking back at the picture, the parabola can't open upwards because then it would cut through the directrix. That means it must open downward, meaning A has to be negative. So for vertex form of a parabola, A is -1, H is the x-coordinate of the vertex, so -1, x minus -1 becomes x plus 1, bring the squared, and K is the y-coordinate of the vertex, which is positive 3.5. So this is choice A. Okay, what is the widest parabola? So widest parabola means absolute value closest to 0. So here A is 1/2. Here we need to get y by itself. So when we multiply both sides by 3, we would get A equals 3. Here we need to divide both sides by 6. So this gives us A is 1/6. And here A is 18. So again, to get a wide parabola, we need the absolute value of A to be closest to 0. So 1/6 is the closest value to 0. All right, we are looking for the point that is equidistant from these 3 other points. So that would come from the circumcenter. And you construct the circumcenter by doing perpendicular bisectors. Okay, Bella rolls a die, so that means the denominator is 6. How many of the outcomes are good? She's happy with an even number, so she's happy with 2, 4, 6. And she's also happy with a number less than 4. So 1 is less than 4, 2 we've already written, 3 is less than 4. So these 5 outcomes make her happy. So that's not listed. Die is tossed, find probability of less than 5 given odd. So first, what's our denominator? Well, the only odd outcomes are 1, 3, and 5. So there's only 3 outcomes that fit the given. And of these, how many of them are less than 5? These 2. Dart hits the board, probability it hits region 2. So area of region 2 is 30 times 15 equals 450. And over area total, so this combined is 40, this combined is 25. So 40 times 25 equals 1,000. And 450 over 1,000 reduces to 9 over 20. All right, so 250 members total, 10% prefer blue. So what is 10% of 250? It's 25. Okay, 3 blue, 5 green, 2 black, 6 red. What's the probability of blue union red, meaning blue or red or both? Well, let's see, how many pencils do we have total? Oops. 8, 10, 16. So there's 16 pencils I can grab. I'm happy with the 3 blue ones. I'm also happy with the 6 red ones. And normally we subtract the probability of both of them happening, but there's no pencil that's both red and blue. So technically we subtract 0 out of 16. Okay, so putting that together, we get 9 out of 16, which is choice B. Flip a coin 4 times. Okay, so probability of getting all heads is greater than probability of all tails. This is false. Each coin flip has an equal chance of heads or tails, so the probability of all heads is 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, but then probability of all tails is the exact same thing. Probability of 4 heads is less than the probability of heads, tails, heads, tails. This is false also because we already did 4 heads and heads, tails, heads, tails. Okay, first flip, half chance of heads. Second flip, half chance of tails. Third flip, half chance of heads. Fourth flip, half chance of tails. It's the same thing. Probability of tails, 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 tails is 1/2. That's false. We just showed up here that it would actually, when you multiply it out, it would be 1/16. And probability of heads, tails is 1/16. Yes, when you multiply this out, you do get 1/16. Okay, so 60% of students have high speed, 30% have a mobile device, and 20% have both. Okay, so 20% have both. 60% of students have high speed, so this full circle is worth 60%. 20% is already right here, so 60 minus 20 means 40% out here. And mobile is 30% total. So this circle has a total of 30%. 20% is already used up, so 30 minus 20 means 10% out here. But we want to know neither high speed nor mobile, so I'm asking for the outside number. So far I've used up 40 plus 20 is 60, plus 10 is 70%, so that means there's 30% left over. So 30% in decimal form is 0.3. So for problem 8, we need to use the union formula. So probability of A or B or both is probability of A plus probability of B minus the probability of A and B both happening. So in this case, so we'll come back to this formula. Are they independent? So to check independence, we use the formula probability of A and B equals probability of A times probability of B. So A and B is 0.1, probability of A is 0.5, probability of B is 0.6. So multiplying these together, we get 0.3 instead, which is not correct. Okay, so if they are not dependent, they have to, if they're not independent, they have to be dependent. So this is true. Is it true that either A or B will always occur? Well, let's try the union formula now. So 0.5 is the probability of A, plus 0.6 is the probability of B, minus the probability of both A and B. Okay, so 0.5 plus 0.6 is 1.1, minus 0.1 is 1 whole. So 1 whole means 100%. So yes, A or B will always occur. Probability of A union B is 1.1. No, we just calculated, it's 1 instead. If you got 1.1, that means you forgot to subtract the probability that both things happen. Okay, so you gotta notice the symbol here. This is the probability of not B. Okay, so 100%, or let's do 1, minus 0.6 means 0.4. So this is correct. So B, C, and E are all correct. All right, let's fill out this two-way table. 176, 5 give 1, 9, 145, 1 give 1, 5, 3, 34 plus 56 is 90. Okay, so now I'll see if I did my math correctly. So I'll add this way first. 1 give 1, 8, 2 give 1, 3. And then adding down, this sum matches this sum, so that's good. Okay, probability a random student would have passed my course. So 231 total students, no, not total students, 231 passed out of 321 total. So this reduces, or in decimal form, it'd be A. Okay, probability that a student would have passed the class and failed the final. So I'm looking at all my students. How many of them meet both conditions of passing the class and failing the final? 89 of them. So 89 over 321 reduces to this. Okay, probability that a student, given they failed the final, so I only care about the students who failed the final. So 145 students failed the final. How many of those 145 students passed the class? 89 of them. So this reduces to this. And probability that a random student, given they failed the final exam. Okay, so there's 145 students who failed the final exam. Of those 145 students, 56 of them failed the class. So this reduces to here.